I've got to talk about the problem with math in school. Stick around and hear me vent. Hi, I'm Rebecca with the Parent Teacher Bridge, where you can find the ideas and resources you need to empower you to be your child's most influential teacher. And today I am talking to you about the problem with math in school. That's right, I just have to get it off my chest. I know that most of my videos have to do with reading and early learning, but I do continue to work with other children other than my own. I'm a private tutor. In addition to being a homeschool mom, I'm still a certified teacher, although I'm not teaching in the school system currently. And so I get to see much of the homework and the teaching strategies that are used in schools right now. Now, I actually started out as a math teacher. I taught for 12 years in private and public schools. And my first 2 years of teaching, I was primarily the math teacher for fifth grade. I had like 1 year I had 70 some students, another year I had 90 some students. So that's a lot of students just in 2 years. And every year after that, I continued to teach math no matter what grade that I was teaching, whether we were switching classes or whether I was teaching all the subjects in a self contained classroom. So that's some of my experience. I was teaching math for a while before I even stayed home with my own children and taught them. Now, before I get into my problems with math, make sure you comment below. It's even more important that you comment than you subscribe, although I would like any likes and subscribes that you could give me. So, what is the problem with the math that is commonly taught in schools right now? Well, it's not so much that the things they are teaching being untrue. They're technically true. And someone who really understands math is going to understand where they are coming from. But it isn't always taught in a clear way, in an appropriate way, and at an appropriate time. The problem that I'm seeing is I've got kids who aren't able to do basic math that their parents 20 or 30 years ago, before some of the fancy strategies were introduced, their parents were able to do this 20 or 30 years ago at their age. And now their child is struggling. Why is their child struggling? Weren't we supposed to improve by now? And the parents want to help their child, and they can to a degree, but when the child is getting tested this way, because this is the way that the strategies were taught, this newer way with the newer curriculum, it doesn't match up to the way the parents learn. It doesn't mean it's incorrect. I get that. But I have some very confused students right now because of the way they're teaching math in school. Number one, too many methods taught at once causes confusion. So, your child's math teacher may call them strategies, they may call them methods, they may say ways, but there are too many different ways that they are teaching how to solve a certain type of problem. And they're teaching these ways either simultaneously or just too close together before the children have mastered even one way. And so, what I'm seeing is these strategies are getting confused with each other. And time again, the children are getting the wrong answer, like each and every time, most times. Now, as a math teacher, I can appreciate there are always going to be different ways to solve a problem. This can be a higher order thinking skill to discuss. Well, this is how I solved it. How did you solve it? Okay. But you're going to be talking about those things when you're getting the answers correct, not when you are a poor, lost child in math class with a deer in the headlight look. So, what I found it best to do was to just teach the most simple, straightforward way of solving a particular math problem until my class mastered it. And if there were a few kids who just couldn't master it, I may meet with those children privately and teach them some other way of getting the correct answer. Or if all the students mastered it, and I said, okay, now that you've learned that way, I've got a little shortcut, or I've got this other way that we can learn how to do that. But the main thing is they're teaching too many ways that are kind of overcomplicated, and they're teaching them at the same time. It's just causing too much confusion. Now, some children are just naturally good at math. They're really great at thinking out of the box. And so when I was teaching, if I had a child solve something another way, I welcomed that. But if they said that kind of prematurely before the other class was really understanding, I usually would say something like, "Oh, that is really interesting that way you did that. Can you show me that on paper? Or when I'm done talking to the class, can you meet me back at my desk and show me how to do that? That is really cool." So I would validate what they were thinking, that, they were on the right track. They were thinking out of the box. That was really, really great. But I knew that while this was still a new skill being taught to my class and I had struggling learners in there, if that student said that or went up to the board and showed it all in front of everybody, it would confuse some of my students. And that's just how I handled it. Now, I know what they're thinking with some of the standards and the way that they are teaching children. They're thinking, okay, if I teach it this way, they'll understand it. But if I teach this way too, they'll understand it deeper. And then this way, then they'll understand it even deeper. And this way, then they'll understand it even deeper. That's just not what I'm seeing, though. That's just not the result that I'm seeing. So I think what they should do instead is to focus on some of these younger grades, teaching them for longer periods of time with real world things, like actually use manipulatives, concrete items. Those little math connecting cubes, those go so far. If you'd like to see one of my videos about different math tools, I will leave a link to that in the description below. I'll go into a little bit more detail there. But the main idea is if you teach simple, straightforward, with actual things the children can hold in their hands, and you teach your math vocabulary from a young age, they're going to have a more solid foundation. So here's an example, um, just from my own life. My child is in middle school and he is just getting to where they do these problems with positive and negative numbers, and adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. And I've worked with students coming from the public schools that are so confused on that. And I'm not saying that every kid in the public schools are. I'm just, that I'm seeing the children who are needing tutoring, but they are so confused about it. But my son picked it up like nothing. And I attribute that to having less confusion in those early years, more just straightforward math, and talking about things, moving manipulatives around, and truly understanding and having a good number sense. That's what they should be doing instead of trying to always teach another way. Now, if these children are missing out on critical experiences like that in elementary school, why do we need to teach them 10 different ways to solve a problem so many times that they are confusing these strategies and getting the wrong answer? Because the point in math is to get the right answer. So the child really only needs one way. I'm not opposed to talking about other ways. I've said that before, but they really just need one way. The point of math, is to get the right answer as much as possible, as consistently as possible. Number two in this math event session is the math is overwhelming and it is not parent friendly. There are so many tutoring parents that I talk to, good, involved parents. They are paying money for a tutor. They want to do what is best. They are willing to print out, extra math help and all of this, but they themselves are a little bit overwhelmed about what to do and how to do it. And I don't necessarily see parent friendly materials being sent home for this group of parents. Some things that might help might be newsletters sent home to the parents. Maybe that include a short video teaching how this method is supposed to work and what their child needs help with. Maybe extra worksheets linked online where if a parent wants to print them out, they can. I talk to many parents that they don't even really know what math curriculum the school is using. They don't know the name of it. Maybe their child isn't allowed to take the math book home. What I'm commonly seeing are math workbooks. Like that is the textbook. And I have my own thoughts about that. The ones that I see, I would not say that they are written in a really good, understandable way. I think sometimes they ask some questions that are pretty stupid. um, Now, a lot of the math textbooks that I see are actually considered consumables. So that basically means they are a workbook and the children are writing in it for school. My own thoughts on that is that someone's getting rich there because I'm not sure that those are being sold much cheaper than actual textbooks. And so I know that when a student gets that, they have it for that year and it can't be reused for another student the next year. So, therefore, the school system keeps ordering them every single year from someone who is getting some amount of money for that. A lot of the time, curriculum is not even decided at a school level. So, like a principal probably isn't even getting to decide this. Um, and sometimes it may be decided at a school district level, but what I'm seeing when I'm searching materials online is that a lot of the school districts, even in different states, are using a lot of the same thing. But it could be that once a certain school district in your state adopts a particular math curriculum, then like everybody there starts to do it too. So it could be kind of like a bandwagon approach where they all just start doing what the other person does. If you have any feedback on that, like if you are teaching in a school system or you work for your state, drop me a comment below and let me know how it works in your state or in your school system. So, if this way of teaching math is confusing so many children, that's our tax dollars spent toward that. So, how do you feel about that? If you don't have a problem with that, you probably aren't the parent of a struggling math student because it certainly bothers me whenever I'm working with some of my tutoring students and I see how much they're struggling versus what it could be like if they were just taught simple and basic math where they learn to get the right answer each and every time. I would like to see more local control on some curriculum options where parents, teachers have actual input. Teachers, I know I was there, I was one of you. I know that your voices aren't getting listened to on this, and I know that you have to just take whatever curriculum comes to you, but I would like to see that. So think about that if you ever get in a position like a school board member or anything like that where you can make a difference. Listen to the voices of the parents and the teachers, the people that actually are working and living with the children. Now, many children out there are getting a solid experience with math via homeschooling. I'm one of those parents out there who has chosen to homeschool her own children. And believe it or not, I'm not the only ex teacher who has decided to homeschool. So take that for what you want. But I do think that that is very telling. So you may want to look into that. But I get to choose my own math curriculum for my children. If something isn't working, I can change it mid year. I can change it the next year. If my child needs extra practice in something, I can do that. If I want a textbook, I can choose that. If I want a workbook, I can choose that. If I want an online service, I can choose that. Now, if your child is currently struggling in math, I do have some tips that you can take to help improve their grade. Now, when you're thinking of improving grades and your child is in a school, you do have to sort of play the game. You do have to have some sort of strategy and know what types of assignments they're grading, what those assignments look like, so you can better prepare your child for when they sit down and they have that assignment for a grade. So be sure to check out my video on failing grades, how to bring a failing grade up. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. But these are practical ideas that you can start today. If you're one of those parents that's teetering on the edge and you are considering the idea of homeschool, maybe you're a little bit scared to like jump in all the way, be sure to check out my survival guide for the new homeschool family. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. Parents, thanks for listening to my vent. Remember, you are your child's most influential teacher.